weirdos!
Weird Science Distribution. Weird Science
Save that for the X-Men podcast.
Welcome, all you weirdos, talking matchsticks, and members of the lupine family the world over. Prepare to receive your 135th Weird Dose of X, the mutant member of your Weird Science podcast family. I am your Phoenix procrastinating host, Jason, broadcasting as always from the Wrong Turn studio, perched high atop stately Weird Science Tower. And with me is a man who is himself broadcasting from a fiery psychic cocoon somewhere in the distant reaches of the galaxy. It's my pal Ruben. Hey Ruben, how the heck are you?
Doing all right.
Glad to hear it.
Not as well as our Eagle fan host, I assume.
No, I haven't heard from him today. I assume he's at the top of a pole somewhere eating a cheesesteak. I don't know how they do things. I did note there was one commercial yesterday that had, was it Dunkin' Donuts making fun of Northwest-style coffee? Did you catch that?
No, I haven't seen that one. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
It was mostly making fun of Starbucks, but I think it was like the whole concept of coffee in your neck of the woods. So
nice.
Kind of fun.
Send it to me. I love that stuff.
Will do. But before I do that, Ruben, we have some actual comic books to talk about this week. Not a ton, but a few. We have a chapter of the Infinity comic, of course, and this week it was pretty darn good. I'll get to that in a second. We also have Phoenix number 8, and we have Wolverine number 6, which ends with the reveal of a big villain that has, well, I was going to say a lot of people talking online, which is not quite true, but it has some people talking online. So we're going to talk about that. But first, we are starting with the ding sound. Where is it? There it is. We're starting with Astonishing X-Men Infinity comic number 10, The Unbeatable Foe, Part 4. Written by Tim Seeley, art by Eduardo Ordino, colors by KJ Diaz, and letters by Clayton Coles. So last time, Ruben, we were watching, it was just a fight between Cap and Juggernaut, which was fine, but it was just a fight. This time we see them team up afterwards, because this is a comic book, and that's the law. That's the way it has to work. and frankly, I thought this was an excellent chapter. Did you have a good time with this one as well, or am I out on a limb here?
I thought it was all right. I didn't view it as an excellent chapter, so maybe you can convince me on that, but I had fun reading it.
Okay, yeah. So, folks out there, if you're not as caught up, you'll remember that we're on board a ship that's transporting one prisoner, Black Tom Cassidy, up to a prison in Westchester County. He's on a boat for some reason. Let's take the guy who makes fire from wood and put him on a wooden boat. Makes sense. Tom's been hearing voices, and he went and blew up a bar. So that's why he got arrested. The ship he's on caught fire. Probably his doing, but we don't know that yet for sure. And now everyone on board, the captain and crew, they're at risk. This chapter is kind of cool because it's narrated from Cap's point of view. And to me, the narration really works. Cap talks about how he's worked with reformed criminals before, including Hawkeye, for instance. But that what really worries him about Juggernaut is just how much power is concentrated in the hands of one single person, and how dangerous that potentially is. Which it doesn't directly reference things like Civil War, but it is very consistent with Cap's position during Civil War, just being concerned about that much power. And, Juggernaut's done some bad stuff, so he's not totally off base here. So we get the fight. There's some, not the fight, the team up here. There's some fun action where they make use of Juggernaut's invulnerability to contain exploding gas cylinders. But it wasn't entirely clear to me why the cylinders were exploding, how they knew they were going to explode. Looked pretty cool on the page, though. And there's one particularly nifty panel where we see just how strong Cap himself is when Juggy has fallen through the deck and Cap not only hauls the big guy out, but swings him completely overhead. I thought that was a neat visual. At the end, though, they both realize that they don't really have what it takes themselves to save the people on the ship, not the right power sets. This ship, as we said, is made of wood, and it's on fire. Juggernaut points out, hey, there's a guy on board who has the perfect set of abilities to address this situation, Black Tom himself. So at the end, we and the camera kind of drops down through the ship to visit Black Tom. He's sitting in the dark, and those matches, the ones he stole from the police station in Chapter 1, those matches are still talking to him. Now, I don't know where he hid those matches so they weren't taken away from him. Probably don't want to think about that. Black Tom's prison wallet, none of my business. But yeah, I thought this was a neat chapter here. We get a to be continued, not a to be concluded. So I think next chapter probably won't be the end of this story. We'll probably get one more after that. And I'm looking forward to really going back to Black Tom, which is where I think we're going. Find out what's going on with those voices.
Mm-hmm. For some reason, they let him wear his gloves and his full outfit. So I'm just going to say they were in his gloves.
Makes sense. So, yeah, I thought this was a neat point of view of Cap looking at the situation. And I think it's bringing us back to Black Tom, and I want to know what's up with him, how he's reacting with the end of Krakoa, his return to the mundane world, and what's up.
Yeah, I'm curious about the talking matches. I want to know what's up with that. But yeah, not one of my favorite characters long term. Although I kind of like the way he's being drawn here, where that little discoloration in his hair sort of looks like a flame.
That is kind of neat. Yeah, let me scroll down to there. Yeah, it sure is. That is the shape of it, and we kind of follow that trail of sparks downward into the bowels of the ship, and meet up at that flame shaped hair. That is pretty neat. Let's see, what else do I want to say about this? Not a whole lot. I think it's kind of fun. At the beginning, we were wondering if there was like another villain influencing Black Tom. I think if we only have 2 short chapters left in the story, it's probably too late to. There hasn't really been any hints since then that there is another person influencing this. So I think it's probably going to turn out to be just something going on in Tom himself. It would be kind of anticlimactic, kind of Deus Ex Machina to bring somebody in now, but we'll have to see what Tim Seeley has in store for us. So if you're not reading the Infinity comic and you're subscribed to Marvel Unlimited, and gosh, you probably should be subscribed to Marvel Unlimited. It's got all the comics in it. Did you know that, Ruben? They're pretty much all there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I enjoyed reading those this week more than the actual issues that were published.
We'll get into my my deep dive.
It's like an exhaustive deep dive
into Marvel Unlimited when we talk about another book. So yeah, I got a lot of value out of it this week, and if you got it, this is a fun story to read. And that's all I have to say about that. Moving on. Next book we're going to talk about is Phoenix number 8, written by Stephanie Phillips, art by Alessandro Miracolo, colors by David Curiel, letters by Corey Pettit. Now, I'm not going to bury the lead here, Ruben. I did not much care for this issue. It took me several tries to even finish reading it. You know, sometimes Jim talks about like bouncing off an issue. Like you get a couple pages in, you just go, I can't do this anymore. Let me flip over to anything else. And what I did while not reading Phoenix was I read about 40 issues of early 2000s Wolverine comics in that Marvel Unlimited app, partially to do some research for that next book, but I think mostly, if I'm being honest with myself, just to avoid reading Phoenix, because this book is not good. It's doing nothing. It's doing nothing slowly. The 2 main characters have very little personality, and Stephanie Phillips, in this book called Phoenix, has done nothing to convince me that the Phoenix is a concept that really even should still be around in 2025, as opposed to a kind of one-and-done concept that should have been retired around 1983. Kind of harsh, but that's what this book's making me think. Are you seeing more value in this book than I am? Is this just a plate of beets that I'm not enjoying?
No, this book sucks. I will comment on your Phoenix observation. I did think the Phoenix 5 was a cool little situation. You know, when a few of the X-Men got it, and then they kind of got corrupted, and I thought that was an interesting development. When
Quentin was involved in that too?
Yeah,
Quentin
exactly. That was AVX.
X-Men. Okay.
Yeah, AVX at some point, whatever that was.
Maybe I'll check
that was fine.
Out.
And then I'm reading Generation Hope right now, and I just decided to do like a Kieran Gillen deep dive, and
as one does, sure.
Yeah. Because after reading these, I needed a palate cleanser. I was like, okay, do I actually like comics?
Oh no!
Yeah, good news, I do. So,
excellent, hooray!
But
how dare you?
Yeah, but anyways, reading that, and then kind of it gave me a little bit more context into was it Rise of the Powers of X or whatever it was called, where Hope kind of was her own creator and had some like Phoenix connections.
Okay.
So I actually kind of like that story now that I understand more of like how it kind of was hinted at way back in Generation Hope. So I think there are some.
Put that on my list too.
Yeah, I think there are some uses for Phoenix, but this issue is not one of them. Like the thing you don't do with Phoenix is just make it a complete nonsense like cosmic thing, right? With no real perception as to like what her power scale was.
Right. So to get to this actual story, and we'll get through this fairly quickly, I hope. At the end of the last issue, we saw Jean and Adani fighting over the Phoenix Force. And it looked to me like Jean had gotten the power back, and it looked to all of us, I guess, like Jean had been transported across the galaxy to the blue area of the moon. Well, that didn't actually happen. The Phoenix Force is now split between Jean and Adani, who has more, no idea how that even works with the Phoenix Force. I don't know. Maybe that makes more sense after seeing the Phoenix 5 stuff. Does it make more sense after having read the Phoenix 5 stuff?
Yeah. They were sort of all weekend.
Okay,
fair enough.
So at least
Phoenix.
there's some precedent for it.
And you have it with like the Dark Phoenix, regular Phoenix kind of concept. There might be, split versions of the power.
Okay. And the other thing is that Jean is not actually in the blue area of the moon. She's not on the moon at all. She is hallucinating or doing an of the mind kind of thing.
Yeah,
while
best issue ever.
inside that fiery psychic cocoon. And of course, she's revisiting the Dark Phoenix saga because that's the only story anyone knows to retell over and over again about the Phoenix. And she's in the cocoon where I guess she's going to transform again. Didn't she just transform, or she was transformed by Eternity like 3 issues ago?
Yeah, well, now she has a new costume, so.
She does. She does need a new costume, so I guess that's a big deal. So yeah, inside the cocoon, we get that relive the Dark Phoenix saga, but different bit. Jean sees pretend version of the old X-Men, so at least we get some X-Men on the page. That's kind of cool. Jean, as the Phoenix, fights a pretend of the mind battle with the Dark Phoenix. We get lots of kind of therapy talk, mumbo-jumbo about, I don't deserve peace and redemption. You can't help others until you help yourself.
God.
I don't need that in a comic book. Maybe, hey, if people are out there and they get value from doing this in the real world, good for you. God bless you. Don't write a comic about it. I don't want to read it. It doesn't look exciting on the page to see people say these things over and over again.
I when I was reading this, I audibly groaned. And it was like 2 or 3 of these like therapy talk lines in a row. I was just like, come on, Stephanie Phillips.
Yeah, it's not great. So at the end of the issue, Jean does bust out of the cocoon. And as you say, Ruben, she has a different costume now. Instead of mostly green, the whole Marvel Girl look with yellow and black elements, it's now, well... You know what it is. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. So, we're going to get sued by Wiz Khalifa now. Sorry about that. So maybe Jean's a Steelers fan now. She looks like she's about to go to the stadium and cheer on the Steelers.
Yeah. Well, she's found balance with the power, but has she found peace?
Oh,
that's the question I really want to know.
Can you say that in a Yoda voice? I think it would sound more profound.
Yeah, probably not.
We'll work on that over next week. You can come back with your Yoda impression. But outside the cocoon, we got a couple things going on. We have Nova and Rocket watching the cocoon from their ship. At one point, Rocket is just like firing weapons at it, even though he knows that it's just a cocoon with Jean inside. So I don't know what the hell he's thinking. Gave him something to do. They mentioned that Captain Marvel, she flew off to free the Galactic Council from wherever Thanos has stashed them since he took over, which I think that sounds like a more exciting story to see in a comic book than what we get here, but you don't get that.
Well, she doesn't deserve peace and redemption. How can she call herself a hero if she can't even help others until she helps herself?
If I had a snoring sound effect here, I would be playing it, but I don't have that one. All I have is...
Ruben.
That's what I have to do. So also outside the cocoon, we have a scene between Adani and Pericus. She uses her portion of the Phoenix Force. First, she randomly creates a bunch of brood by accident that she has to chop up with her sword. And I just don't understand Adani's goals or motivations in this book, right? Sometimes she hates Jean and that's her motivation. Sometimes she helps Jean out by telling her where Pericus is. Sometimes she's fighting Pericus. Sometimes she's obeying his every command. And she just seems like just barely a character, just like a damp rag of a person rather than anyone who has any motivation or reason to exist, which is a bummer because if you remember in the first issue, I thought, oh, yeah, she's kind of like something out of Thor, like the whole Godslayer thing out of Thor, but felt like she could be an actually cool character. And 7 issues later, yeah, I was wrong on that one.
Well, maybe this story is not about erasing the darkness, but using it.
Darkness, erase you must. See how much better it sounds when you use the voice?
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm just going to finish the rest of this, by the way, this review, just finding these lines.
Well, I'm going to record these.
I'm having way too much fun.
I'll have the whole set of drops, and then you won't even need to dial in next time. I'll just hit the drops. It'll be fine. So at the end of her story here, she ends up bringing back the rest of the Dark Gods.
Yeah.
I don't know why that happened. Was she trying to do that? I know Pericus wanted that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
How did she do it? It was because she was angry enough to do it at some point? Almost like a dark side of the Force thing going on? But who cares about the Dark Gods? I don't care about the Dark Gods. I mean, Pericus himself is kind of boring. So maybe there's a fan base out there for this group of wackos, but I'm not a member of that fan base. So that's all I have to say about this issue. The art looks to me completely fine. I saw a lot of people complaining online about the faces, saying, oh, this story and this character deserves better artwork. So there's people out there not really thrilled with Alessandro Miracolo. But for me, yeah, some of the faces look a little squishy, look a little stretchy in places. But, that's not the reason that I'm kind of annoyed with this issue. I am wondering if this book might end at issue 10. That's as far as the solicits go. And the solicits talk about, a final battle, but you never know if that's the final battle of an arc or of like the whole thing. There's nothing saying this is the last issue, but maybe that's where the story is gonna end. People online are also saying, looking at sales figures, at least what we have, and saying, oh, it's selling pretty well, but I don't know. I don't get it. It's not for me. I give Phoenix number 8 a 4 out of 10. How about you, buddy?
I'd be positive and give it a nice 5, but there's not much to it. I guess I like the art. That's basically what I look forward to every time the issue comes out. But
it is a different style than most other books, and it is kind of nice to see some characters drawn a different way. So that's nice.
Pericus needs another arm, by the way. I didn't even realize until this issue that he only had one arm. I just thought it was behind his cape the whole time.
Oh, I guess I hadn't noticed that either.
And there's a scene where his arm is up.
Did he lose an arm in this story, or was that
not in this arm? Yeah, so I did look this up. Apparently,
okay, tell us.
He was fighting.
Give us a little Pericus deep dive.
It's like an exhaustive deep dive.
Yeah, so at some point Thor had some sort of like the Odin power. Maybe he still does, sure. But yeah, he used that in like some axe and like the God Killer axe and chopped off his arm.
Oh, okay. So that's a nice continuity. That has not been mentioned at all as far as I can recall in the text or the dialogue, but I guess maybe the artist knows that. So
yeah, the artist definitely does.
Alessandro Miracolo.
Yeah, because I'm just like, this is really weird scene. Like, where is that right arm? Right, you look at every scene and there's like a cape, and then there's that final scene where it's like he grabs Adani with his left arm and the cape kind of goes up. I was like, there's no arm still.
See.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. That's the most interesting thing I've learned about this book today. So thanks, Ruben. Appreciate it. Okay, that's enough time on Phoenix. Let's move on to a book that I liked. No, not the greatest book ever, but I like this certainly a whole lot more than Phoenix, which is the epitome of damning with faint praise. But it is Wolverine number 6, Lineage. Written by Saladin Ahmed, art by Martin Coccolo, colors by Brian Valenza, and letters by Corey Pettit. So this is a comic that to me is written backwards, right? It's all written to lead up to that final page reveal when we find out who might really be behind all of this adamantine stuff. But first we have to get there. When we ended last issue, Logan was, for the second time, falling under the sway of that golden adamantine metal. This time he hallucinates that he's deep underground in the adamantine's natural habitat. He hears, quote, the ringing of adamantine, the metal of the gods, and also the screeching of man's false metal, adamantium. So I don't know if I really absorbed this before, but adamantium itself, the stuff that's more common in the Marvel Universe, not the new adamantine stuff. Adamantium is canonically a man-made alloy. Sometimes it's called a steel alloy. Sometimes it's spoken of as being created from a mixture of various resins. So there is a real natural versus artificial kind of sense to this hatred of adamantium, or adamantine for adamantium. Logan is woken up from his trance by Nightcrawler calling his name, and then he remembers where he is. He's at this factory where adamantium resins are made, this factory having been attacked and set on fire by the adamantine-influenced crew of Cyber, Constrictor, and Lady Deathstrike. Before they can attempt to track that crew to their next target, we need to pause to bring in another character and have a brief fight scene. And so we see Laura fighting Kid Wendigo until Logan steps in and puts a stop to it. I did like that one panel when Logan catches Laura's spiked foot or clawed foot right before it pokes a hole in Kid Wendigo's head. That was pretty neat. Laura's there because she had been following up on some other anti-adamantium actions, just hard to say, and that's what led her here to this factory. She thought that when she saw Wendigo here, she thought, oh, must be Wendigo doing all this, but, the fight lasts only a couple panels, maybe a page, and then they break it up, and they share their information. So I was glad to see that not go on too far.
Yeah.
Laura does confirm that she, too, has been feeling an odd call deep in her bones. And here, an editorial note helpfully reminds us that, yes, Laura had adamantium added to her bones and claws early on in the Krakoan era during one of her resurrections. And I did look back, and I remember seeing this, that some people thought it was a mistake at first, but it was revealed, yeah, this was on purpose. One time when she was revived, they just added that adamantium. I mean, they had a ton of adamantium lying around. We've seen all the Wolverine skeletons, so they must have figured, why not?
Yeah.
So now our team splits up. Kurt and Kid Wendigo are going to hang back in the Blackbird, while Logan and Laura head into this data center where, yada yada, hand-waving, there's some sensors that say that that's where the adamantine crew are now. Did you think that the whole they're at a data center thing makes sense? Because they tell us on page that, they're trying to erase the recipe of how to make adamantium. But I don't think that's how data centers work, right? There's not like there's one copy of how to do this in one data center. It's got to be all over the place, encrypted various ways. But that's what we're going with. They're going to try.
I don't know, man. Maybe it's patented. The patent hasn't expired yet.
I'm sure it's. I mean, maybe it's patented, but even if you have a patent, you don't have, like the recipe for Kentucky Fried Chicken's herbs and spices, right? They say it's in a vault somewhere.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be the only copy. Somebody else knows it, or it's in a computer.
Well, that's why they're killing the people. They're killing the scientists and destroying the...
It's our excuse to have... They don't want to make it another factory, so they made it a data center. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, what I'm going to remember from this is the next time we see some arbitrary person with adamantium, I'm going to be like, how did they easily acquire adamantium, right? Like, it'll be mass-produced somewhere, and it's going to really piss me off.
Krakoa. It's, fallout from the breakup of Krakoa. That's going to be the explanation, because they had tons of it. They found a Wolverine skeleton somewhere, and they used it. Krakoa explains everything. Any character you want to come back, any character you want to have their powers back, any character you don't want around anymore, you can ship them off to the White Hot Room. Krakoa explains everything. It's the perfect explanation. I love it. So they enter this data center, and they see, like you say, it's trashed just like the factory was. Dead bodies of scientists and, data bros everywhere. Going a little further, I thought this was going to be the big reveal. They run into Donald Pierce, leader of the Reavers. Ruben, do you remember the last time we saw Donald Pierce? Not so very long ago?
No.
It was in Psylocke issue 1.
Oh.
Just in November. There were these two Reavers who were guarding that AIM party that Psylocke infiltrated.
Yeah.
One of them was Skullbuster, who Psylocke killed, and the other one was Donald Pierce, who's the leader of the Reavers, and he got away. So that's he could be here. No matter what order these books go in, he did get away from Psylocke there. So Pierce, he's not a mutant. He's like a cyborg, and a lot of his cybernetic situation is made of adamantium. So sure, makes sense that he'd be pulled into this adamantine situation. And yes, his eyes and skin have turned golden. He too is under the influence. So the Wolverines follow Pierce deeper into the data center and wind up in a fight against all of the adamantine characters. Pierce, Cyber, Constrictor, and Lady Deathstrike. Fight here, again, it's pretty good. Cyber and Deathstrike team up to do a fastball special against the Wolverines, which I thought was fun. It's not called out by name in the text, but if you look at the art there on the bottom of page 17, it's clearly, the big guy, winding up and throwing the pointy one. So for me, that's a fastball special. So Laura and Logan win the fight, only for it to be revealed that there's yet another figure behind all of this, even beyond Pierce. And I'm not sure yet if this guy is being controlled by the adamantine, if he's controlling the adamantine, yet to be revealed here. But this character is, if I had a drum roll, I'd hit it. It's Romulus. So, Ruben, what you happen to know anything about this Wolverine-looking shadowy figure named Romulus?
Just that he's old, and he was responsible for messing with Wolverine a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But that my 100% knowledge of Romulus comes from like that, whatever History of Wolverine one-shot issue.
Life of Wolverine, right.
Life of Wolverine,
that started off as an Infinity comic, and then later on they put it together in an actual physical issue. That was one that Jim Zub wrote. And the idea there was to kind of clean up Logan's backstory, what happened in what order. And Romulus was in it, but very, very briefly. And it sure seemed like Marvel was trying to kind of push him into the background, where I'm kind of surprised here to see Saladin Ahmed bring him back. But so who is Romulus? It is time. This is what I did all my reading on. I read all those 40-plus Wolverine issues from like 2007 through 2012, and that's how I can do
It's like an exhaustive deep dive.
not too exhaustive. Let me know if it gets too exhaustive. So Romulus, he's really kind of the ultimate hashtag shadowy figure. He's been involved in several layers of retcon. So I'm not gonna go through all the retcons of retcons of retcons. I'm gonna try to kind of clean it up. He appeared mainly in 2 Wolverine stories. He was the main villain of the 50-issue Wolverine Origin series that ran from 2006 to 2010. And then he was brought back briefly in just a handful of issues and a storyline of Wolverine in 2012. Romulus reminds me a lot of Vandal Savage, in that Romulus claims to have been alive for many centuries, says he has a shadowy organization and was secretly controlling things behind the scenes. He looks a lot like an older, bulkier, like a kind of like a dad bod version of Wolverine to me, with similar hair. He has the typical set of powers: your strength, agility, healing factor, all that good stuff. At first, he doesn't have real claws, but he does wear gloves with claws attached to them. So effectively, he has same kind of claws as Wolverine too. And early on, they were floating the idea that he was kind of like this leader of an ancient humanoid race that had descended not from apes, but from wolves. They called it like Lupo sapiens, something like that, or lupines. And supposedly, all of the wolf-like or dog-like mutants, Wolverine, Sabretooth, Wildchild, Wolfsbane, all of them, even Sasquatch, who wasn't even really a mutant, he was like a gamma mutate. But the idea was that, hey, they're not really the kind of being you think they are. They're really lupines, descendants of wolves. Later on, the whole lupine thing was retconned away and said to be just a lie Romulus made up to confuse Logan. No one ever mentioned it again. Other than that, Romulus was said to have been manipulating Logan and his memories basically his entire life. Logan and Sabretooth were supposed to have worked for Romulus for years. Romulus is supposed to be the one who grabbed Logan's newborn kid Akihiro after a Winter Soldier murdered his mother Itsu. This is the part that can't really be retconned away because Akihiro and Romulus were kind of created together. So if you want to have Akihiro around, you can't really get rid of Romulus. But we find out that Romulus was behind the Weapon X program. Romulus is even the Wolverine's famous first appearance when he fights Hulk and Wendigo, and then later on he's recruited by the X-Men. That was all a setup from Romulus to get him recruited by the X-Men as like a sleeper agent. That's what it said. And the story goes that when Logan joined the X-Men, Professor X scans Logan's mind, sees what's going on, and he locks away all of Romulus's mental conditioning, as well as all of Logan's memories of everything having to do with Romulus. So we can always say that any given Logan memory, either he doesn't remember it, but it was locked away, or he does remember it, but it was a hallucination. It's all, that's all that Logan's crazy backstory that never makes sense, all tied up here. So over the course of that Wolverine origin story, Logan learns about the existence of Romulus. He teams up with Akihiro to find him. And yeah, at the end, first Romulus is sent to the Dark Dimension or the Dark Force Dimension through Cloak. Then he comes back, and then it's all undone. 2 years later, they fight him again. At this point, Romulus has the Weapon X adamantium treatment applied to himself, and including real claws. So that's why he's an adamantium character now. And then he was just locked up in the raft, and anyone can escape from the raft. So that is the story of Romulus. He's only appeared in like 30 issues, but he's supposed to be this big bad guy. We'll see if Saladin Ahmed redeems Romulus, creates a Romulus story that actually has people excited about the character, or if, like I'm seeing online, a lot of people go, ugh, Romulus, and not, oh boy, Romulus. So we'll see how this works out. And I am curious to find out what Romulus's position is relative to the adamantine. We see his arms hiding behind his back in that last panel. Last time we saw him, he had adamantine claws, so I don't know if they're hiding if he has claws or not. His eyes aren't glowing yellow like the character is controlled by the adamantine, so maybe he's the one controlling the metal itself. I am kind of curious to see what happens next. This issue, nothing before the reveal is all that exciting. Yeah, Laura and Wendigo having a fight is kind of fun. It's nice to have Laura around in the book. I like her better here than in her own book, but, that's different people will vary there. So I'm kind of looking forward to what comes next, but this thing wasn't great, wasn't horrible, looked kind of neat, and it does make me want to go read the next issue, so I guess I'm going to give Wolverine number 6 a perfectly decent 7.3 out of 10. And Ruben had to go, and a few minutes ago, you might have noticed he kind of disappeared. I think he's doing what he calls actual work. That doesn't sound like any fun to me. I'd rather be on a comic book podcast, but Ruben has to do what Ruben has to do.
Ruben.
Oh, my goodness.
Ruben.
That's Ruben. So I'm going to say, he can't tell me I'm wrong, so I'm going to say that Ruben is giving this issue of Wolverine a 7.5 out of 10. I think he liked it just a little bit better than I did. Okay, so now it's time for just me by myself to wrap this thing up. Next week, we have 3 whole books and not just 2. We have X-Men number 11, where there's some kind of alien invasion situation going on. It looks like it's probably a one-shot, maybe in between major arcs, or maybe it's the kickoff of a whole new arc. Hard to tell. We'll find out together. We have Magic number 2, when she and that kid are going to set out to take down that ancient evil. We have Psylocke number 4 next week already, which we had Psylocke number 3 just last week, so only 1 week off between issues. That's an odd schedule. Last we saw, she was breaking into the upstate New York mansion of that kind of Batman-esque villain guy. Other books next week of possible interest to ex-readers, but that Ruben and I will likely not discuss on the podcast. Well, they include Deadpool Wolverine number 2 by Ben Percy. The first one of those was kind of fun. Cable Love and Chrome number 2 by David Pepose. And that one was all right. That's the one where there's kind of a lady Cable he meets up with in this possible future. We'll check in on that. And also next week, I'm pretty sure that Jim's going to be talking about this on the main podcast because it's One World Under Doom number 1. This is the giant crossover event written by Jed McKay, the X-Men writer, so that's why I think it matters to us. But it should matter for the whole Marvel universe. I am curious to see just how much it brings X-Men stuff into it. Okay, so let's see. Recommended reading. Well, if you got a lot of time on your hands, you could just go and read all 50 issues of Wolverine Origins. Romulus is the big bad of that series. He's not in every issue, so if you want to just see the ones about Romulus, just look him up in the Marvel fandom wiki, click on appearances, and it'll tell you exactly what issues he's in. That's what I did. I read like 30 issues out of that 50. But really, what I'm going to recommend is a different comic. Just one single issue that I happened to stumble across while researching Romulus. It's from the same era, but Romulus isn't even in it. The issue is Wolverine number 56 from 2007, Legacy number 245. It's a one-and-done issue that falls between major arcs, doesn't really connect to the continuity of the time. It's kind of an evergreen story, could be happening to Wolverine anytime. It's written by Jason Aaron, who would later go on to have a rather long run on the character, but this is his first full issue of Wolverine. I think he had one Wolverine story in an anthology earlier, but this is his first, hey, I wrote an issue of Wolverine. The art is by a guy named Harold Chaykin, so that's pretty cool too. The story, it's about a guy who goes into work every day, and his job is that every few minutes an alarm goes off, and he has to take this giant machine gun and fire it down into a pit at a helpless prisoner. That's his job. Now, you can probably guess who that prisoner is. It's a kind of a cool story. It's the best single issue I read this past week, and I read, like I say, about 45 to 50 issues this week, counting, all the back reading I did. It's Wolverine, number 56 from 2007 by Jason Aaron. One of the best Jason Aaron books I've read, and worth seeking out in Marvel Unlimited or digging up from the back issue somewhere. So I can't ask Ruben because he's not here, but I would ask him, hey, if our lawyer listeners themselves were to find themselves trapped at the bottom of a pit, how might they pass the time in between machine gun volleys? And I'd say, and Ruben would say, they should probably read some more X-Men comics.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
You know what it is. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow.